that's all I have to do for the bread maker, which is really cool. And isn't this pretty? It's such a pretty bread maker. I like it because it just has, it's a good like starting bread maker for beginners, you know, because it just has different programs that you set it to for different types of bread. So I've been experimenting. Right now I'm just using like the book that comes with it because the recipes are tried and true and they will work, and they've honestly been really good. But eventually I'm going to start practicing with some sourdough and some other types of things. It also just has a rise program, which is pretty nice. So if I'm just making dough and I just need it to rise, I can just stick it in there. I'm just getting up my recipe for the burger buns. I've never done this before. I've made similar things and I wanted to make sure that I got these done tonight because I actually want to let them sit in the fridge overnight. I really like letting my sourdough sit and ferment for a while. It gives it these properties that makes it easier to digest. So I'm gonna get started on the buns. So I wanted to talk about what just happened. So if you are baking and you're feeling like your baked goods aren't turning out and you're not really sure why and you want to improve in baking, I would highly recommend using a food scale. You know, a lot of online recipes show the US system and the metric system, and you can use either. I always go for metric system if I can use it. I, for one, just really like using the scale. I don't have to use as many dishes. It's just easier, I find, and faster. But this kind of thing happens a lot. It said 1 cup of flour or 120 grams of flour. So I just like grabbed a cup of flour and I was like, whatever, I just dumped it in and figured I would just like adjust the measurement as needed. It was 180 grams of flour in 1 cup. The recipe calls for 120. That's a significant difference in how much flour you're putting in the recipe. So if I had followed the US system, my brownies probably would have turned out too dry. So I just think it's really important to know that, because weighing measurements when it comes to baking is so important. Like especially when you're making bread and things like that, it's really simple to use a scale. If you have a few extra bucks to buy one, like it's so worth it if you're trying to improve in baking, because honestly, if you're one of those people that's like, I just can't figure it out, like my cookies are too dry or my brownies are too wet or whatever, it's probably because you're not using a scale. Yeah, I just wanted to show that because that was such a prime example of why I just don't use the US system anymore. I always weigh my ingredients. It works out for me every single time. My baking has improved tremendously. Almost every single time I make a loaf of bread, it turns out, it's just so much better, and I measure to a T. Like, I'm very precise with my measurements. Some cashews that I'm trying to use up, and personally, anytime I make any sort of banana product like banana bread or muffins, I really love to add a nut to them. I would prefer like pecans or walnuts, but this is just what I have, and I think cashews are another kind of soft buttery nut that would be good. These are unsalted, unroasted, so these would be mostly just for the crunch if nothing else, but I really do like to add nuts to brownies. So I'm just gonna chop up some of these and throw them on top. The right lighting right now. Difficult time of day. What I typically do when I make dough is they always tell you to like take it out and put it in an oiled bowl, but I just find that to be a waste of dishes. So I always just use the same bowl, as long as it's not like super coated and, you know, like flour and stuff. But if your dough kneaded properly, then hopefully most of the flour should be off the walls. So there's like a tiny bit in mine right now, so I'm just gonna pick it off, stick it on my dough, throw some oil in here, and then all I need to do is put some plastic wrap on this, put it in the fridge, and then I'm gonna let it ferment and rise overnight. We will see how this does. I don't know if this recipe is meant to sit overnight. I've never really let a yeast recipe sit overnight, so I'm really curious to see what happens, and you all will see with me if this fails or not. But yeah, I'm just gonna let it sit because I just want it to ferment and I want it to be more sour. So I'm gonna let this sit overnight. Tomorrow, Probably in the morning, I will take it out, roll it into balls, and let it do its second rise. And I'll bake them, because we're gonna make burgers tomorrow night. So like I'll bake them sometime during the day, and then we'll have them for dinner. I just used like the spray avocado oil. You can use whatever oil, it doesn't matter. And then I just kind of spray the bowl all around. I just plop this back in there, and then I cover it. Good morning, it's the next day, and I wanted to show you what my brownies turned out like. Here's one of them. They look pretty. They have good flavor. Like, I really liked the combination of banana and chocolate. I thought it was good, but these turned out more like a cake than a brownie, and that is my least favorite kind of brownie. I like my brownies to be gooey. So these weren't like a hard no. You know, they tasted good and I enjoyed them last night, but I don't think I'll make them again. I just don't like that like cakey brownie. I haven't even gotten ready yet this morning. Today, Josh and I are gonna go to the gym. We always go to the gym on Fridays. And otherwise, I think it's a pretty chill day. So I'm just gonna hang out, do some gardening, whatever. Tonight we're grilling burgers, like I said, so I wanted to get my buns shaped and let them come to room temp and do their second rise, and then I'll bake them at some point today. Here's how much my dough rose overnight. It might be hard to tell, but this was definitely half the size last night, if not less. so the last thing I'm gonna do is make a pumpkin sourdough discard bread, like you would think of like a banana bread or a pumpkin bread, like a soft bread. I'm gonna do that. I really like to have something like this pre-sliced and frozen so that I can just take like one slice out and use it for breakfast sometimes or a snack. I have some cans of pumpkin that I just realized I needed to use, so I thought this would be a good idea to use up my sourdough discard and my pumpkin. And I love a good pumpkin bread. It does not need to be October to make yourself a good spicy pumpkin bread. All these recipes are really complicated. Here we go, this is what I'm looking for. There's this little part of me that wants to trial doing this in my bread maker. You know, I'm just gonna give it a try. It's like, why not? Much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed baking with me and watching me make a few different things. It was really fun. I had some things turn out and I had some things kind of like not turn out, but I definitely was experimenting this time, trying things that were different, adding, you know, rye flour, letting my dough sit overnight in the fridge, and trialing using my bread maker for different things. And it was really fun. I don't know, I just was like having fun experimenting. So I'm really happy with how things turned out. I have some fun baked goods to share with my neighbor, and I just really needed to bake, so it felt really good. And if you like baking maybe you should go get some baking done, because it's always really relaxing and enjoyable for me. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.
Do you smell the buns? They smell good. Oh, you're a good boy. Do you smell the hamburger buns?